Some things in life are just meant to be together, right? You got peanut butter and jelly, milk and cookies, the word never and funches, salt and pepper, shooting anything from a distance and saying, Kobe, as you do it. They're just meant to go together. Well, in this video, we're talking a few mock draft duos that you may want to target in 2020. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there, and we have ourselves a different style of mock draft video for you here this week. Sure, myself, Kyle, we could sit up here and make a bunch of player picks and go through a bunch of different scenarios, and that has value. However, we're trying to further your knowledge in fantasy football overall. So we're really going to be focusing on the first two rounds today, the best duos, right, to start off your draft in fantasy football. Now, you know myself and Kyle are huge running back guys, right? We want a lot of running backs early, but we're all about value, so we're not going to reach a couple rounds just to take a position if there's some great value at a different position on the board. So trying to help you nail the first two rounds of your draft. So we're going to go through those here today. If you enjoy the content, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. We would greatly appreciate it. But let's take a look at how this could play out here in the first couple rounds. All right, so we're going to start off and really start here at number 1 and work our way down all the way through the 12th pick of the second round. So first guy off the board is probably going to be the first guy in the majority of drafts. It's Christian McCaffrey. If you have the 1.01 more times than not, you're going to see him come off the board first. Do I hate Saquon Barkley at number 1? I don't hate it. But, I mean, personally, I'm still sticking with Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, this is where I would have Saquon Barkley. Really, I think the guy is on the verge of having a great season again this year. Burned a lot of people last year, right? A lot of people not too happy with what they got from him last year, but you saw second half of the season. Even though it wasn't against great competition, he looked healthy. Remember, he suffered a high ankle sprain earlier in the year. I'm looking for a huge bounce back. Daniel Jones to take a step forward, and we already know they have multiple wide receiving weapons on the outside to pull defenses away. Number 3, Zeke Elliott, and he's probably the safest guy, I guess you could say, right here at the beginning. You know the volume is going to be there. You know he has a solid offensive line around him. Another team filled with wide receiving talent to pull defenses out of the box. Zeke Elliott is probably going to go 1.03 in the majority of all drafts. Number 4, I have Alvin Kamara. Now, a lot of people feel burned by Alvin Kamara also. However, don't forget, this guy also was not 100% healthy last season. He is a pass-catching weapon out of the backfield in an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot. A division that's going to be very high-powered with Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees. They're going to be throwing a lot all season long, and that just bodes really well for Alvin Kamara. Yes, he can take the ball out of the backfield. Yes, he has that touchdown upside around the goal line. Sure, Latavius Murray is going to be involved in that offense, but this is once again going to be the Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara show in New Orleans here this year. I think the addition of Emmanuel Sanders only helps things out. So I got Alvin Kamara right here at 1.04. Number 5, the teammate of Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. And I really can't put him any further down the list than this at this point. I mean, sheer volume, right? This is a guy that can go out every single week, record 10 receptions, and really help your fantasy team win. Yeah, he may never be that guy that averages 20, yards per reception. He's going to, move the chains a lot. They're going to look at him a lot, and that's how he racks up so many receptions. And if you're in any type of PPR league, that's absolute gold. So I got him at number 5. Number 6, Nick Chubb. A lot of people want to hop off this bandwagon again. A lot of people want to say, oh, well, you just love Nick Chubb. And you're right, but there's a reason for that. Of course, Kareem Hunt is going to be involved. But they've brought in Austin Hooper when they now have 2 tight ends as of the time of this recording because David Njoku is still there. They're going to be using a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to run the football with new head coach Kevin Stefanski. Now, even if Chubb doesn't get 20 touches a game, say he gets 17 or 18. That's still 250 plus touches on the year. The guy has already showed great efficiency. The offensive line is improved. We know with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry on the outside, defenses will have to account for that. Now the addition of Austin Hooper gives them another target across the middle. This offense is going to be improved from what we saw in 2019, and it's going to start with the run game. That's what Kevin Stefanski does. We saw it in Minnesota last year with Dalvin Cook. So Nick Chubb, I got him number 6. Number 7, Devontae Adams. Another one of those guys that people just want to kind of disrespect at times this year. Remember, yes, he was not 100% healthy last year either, but when he was healthy, he was dominant. And they didn't add anybody there to catch balls other than Devin Funchess. And if we know that he struggles with anything, it's catching balls, does Devin Funchess. So Devontae Adams, the clear-cut number 1 target of Aaron Rodgers in an offense that's going to throw a lot, got him at number 7. Number 8, Joe Mixon. Another one of those guys, a lot of people is like, nah, I'm going to pass on Mixon. I mean, Kyle has a pretty good argument for Joe Mixon and proving his point as to why he thinks that Joe Mixon can be one of the best running backs in football here this year. The offense in Cincinnati is going to be improved. The offensive line back to full health, and we like that volume, right? Joe Mixon has it, and he can play all 3 downs, has that pass-catching upside. He's very capable of catching balls out of the backfield. I got Mixon at number 8. Talking about volume, we go to number 9 and Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. Now, sure, it hurts that they lost Jack Conklin on the offensive line. That's a big loss for them, right? But one thing is for sure here, Derrick Henry is still going to touch the ball close to 300 times this year on the ground. He's not a huge pass-catching weapon out of the backfield, and they just drafted rookie Darrynton Evans to maybe take away a few of those roles, but that's okay. Derrick Henry has never been overly involved in the passing game, and the guy still scores fantasy points. The touchdown upside on a weekly basis is always there. I still like Derrick Henry, got him at number 9. Number 10, this is where I have Dalvin Cook, and he's a few spots lower than he is for a lot of people, but the risk is still a little bit there, right? How much more Alexander Mattison do we see this year? How much does it really change in Minnesota with no Kevin Stefanski there? Now, obviously, there's still going to be a run-first team, and Dalvin Cook is an elite talent. That's why he's still within the top 10 picks. I got him at number 10. Number 11 is Tyreek Hill, a guy who can put up some huge fantasy points, but is not reliant on huge volume. This guy can go out there and get you only 6 targets and maybe 4 catches, but those 4 catches go for $112 and a touchdown and really give you a solid floor on a weekly basis. As long as he's healthy, he's producing in one of the best offenses in all of football in Kansas City, and him and Patrick Mahomes are a match made in fantasy heaven. I got him at number 11. Number 12, Julio Jones. And we kind of talked about this division when we were talking about Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, right? They're going to throw the ball a lot. Julio Jones has been really good for a really long time, and just because he's getting a little bit older, he shows no signs of slowing down. This guy is another one of those guys that's going to go out there and get you right around 1,300 yards and 100 receptions on a yearly basis. He's going to be hovering right around those numbers. If he can put it together and start scoring some more touchdowns, he could challenge Michael Thomas to still be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. I think he's a steal. I got him right here at number 12. But now, this is where it's time to start making some decisions, right? The surefire studs, you took them in the first round. How do you back it up? What do you follow it up with here in the second to really give your team a good base to build off of? Well, at the 112, you took Julio Jones, one of the best wide receivers in all of fantasy football. But you know Kyle, myself, a lot of other members of Headliner Nation, we love early running backs. You don't want to reach for a running back just to fill a position, but if there's some studs still on the board, you don't want to pass them by in round 2, because if you do, the running backs that you're going to end up being reliant upon all season long, they're going to have some question marks. So if there's still some studs there, you got to take them. So right here at the 2.01, I went with Josh Jacobs. And a lot of people want to knock the possibility that he may not see the volume in the passing game. Well, that's okay. He's paired with one of the best pass catchers, one of these guys that racks up receptions in the first round with Julio Jones to maybe kind of counteract that a little bit. We still know Josh Jacobs, he's going to touch the ball over 225 times this year in an offense where he's going to be featured. A lot of other weapons there, right? Josh Jacobs produced last year, and there was nobody on the outside to pull defenders away. Now they have a lot of young receiving talent, and that can only help Josh Jacobs. So I have him paired up with Julio Jones, first pick of the second round. Next up, Tyreek Hill. Who are we pairing Tyreek Hill with? Well, at the 2.02, I took Austin Eckler. One of the biggest things I talked about with Tyreek Hill, he's not one of those guys that's going to go out there and have a huge amount of receptions. He's not reliant on that volume. But Austin Eckler is just somebody that you can pair with him that has a huge ceiling, that likes to catch balls. I mean, Austin Eckler is still highly, highly undervalued. Everybody wants to go out there and say that, hey, the only reason that he caught so many balls is because Phillip Rivers can't throw the ball down the field and he checked down all the time. Everybody who says that is just taking the word of a national narrative and not going out and doing the research for themselves. If you watch the film on Austin Eckler, a lot of the balls that were thrown to his way last year were designed passing plays out of the backfield. The guy is involved in the passing game. The coaching staff did not change, right? Austin Eckler is going to line up in the backfield. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be all over the field, and he has shown over multiple years when he gets the ball in space, he can make big things happen. Pairing him up with Tyreek Hill is definitely where I would go. Now, Austin Eckler in drafts is falling a little bit later, right? His ADP is back half of the second round. If he, in your draft, falls that late and you can pair him up with an Alvin Kamara, in my opinion, if you are in any type of PPR league, if you can pair Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler, that may be the best PPR duo here for 2020. But for the sake of this mock draft, if I'm drafting here at the 202, after I already took Tyreek Hill in the first, Austin Eckler is going to be my choice here in the second. At the 203, who are we going to pair with Dalvin Cook, who we took at the 10th pick in the first round? I'm going Kenyon Drake. I'm going double running back because if both of these guys pop off, you are going to be sitting pretty in your fantasy football leagues. I don't think it really matters who plays running back for the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to produce fantasy numbers. It's just the type of offense that they run. Kind of similar to what we've seen in the past in maybe like a Pittsburgh, right? Doesn't matter who you really put in the backfield. It's the entire offense that really makes the running back. We saw it last year in Arizona, right? David Johnson was one of the best running backs in fantasy football first half of the season until he got hurt. Insert Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds, he put together a couple solid starts. They trade for Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake explodes, second half of the season. It's really a product of that system, that air raid offense, and then they added DeAndre Hopkins, which is only going to give, more open lanes for Kenyon Drake to run through. Plus, he'll be out there on all three downs. I got him paired up with Dalvin Cook. This is the ultimate boom or bust stack right here with Dalvin Cook and Kenyon Drake. At the 204, who are we going to pair with Derrick Henry? Well, we talked about Derrick Henry really not being involved in the passing game much, right? And being that these are half-point PPR type of mocks that we normally do, we need some pass catching upside a little bit, but there's still some running backs available that I really want to focus on. And the first one is going to be Miles Sanders. So I'm going to pair up Miles Sanders and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is going to eat up the volume. Miles Sanders is going to help me in the reception side of things, right? He's still going to see close to 17 touches a week, which is huge volume. We saw what he could do with that volume second half of the season last year, and now there's really nobody in that backfield to challenge Miles Sanders for carries. We've seen the guy has great pass catching ability out of the backfield. Pairing him up, in my opinion, with Derrick Henry is a no-brainer here at the 2.04. 205 is where things get a little bit interesting because honestly, there's a big drop-off in running backs right here. So do we want to reach rounds in advance early just to fill a running back spot because we like running backs? No, we're not going to because there's a lot of other talent out there that we don't want to pass on to pick a running back that maybe we can get in the third. So at the 205, I'm going Travis Kelce, tight end, Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to pair him up with Joe Mixon from the first round. Now, Travis Kelce at the tight end position is basically a wide receiver one, right? Because, over the past few years, his point total may be for the tight end position, but if you were to, put him in with the wide receivers, he's finishing inside the top 12 regularly. Now, the tight end position isn't as deep as the wide receiver position. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a tight end here, take the best overall tight end, really win that slot on a weekly basis, and then really start building off of other running backs in the later rounds and all that later wide receiver talent. I think starting off with Travis Kelce and Joe Mixon is a great start right here at the 205. 206, same thing, right? We took Devontae Adams in the first at the 107, but there's still not a lot of running backs that we can reach for this early, so DeAndre Hopkins still sitting on the board is another one of these guys who people are kind of off on this year, and I'll admit I have him a little bit lower on the rankings as well, just because of the amount of options in Arizona. He's not going to be force-fed probably like he was in Houston. However, the guy is still going to easily see over 100 targets, and now you've paired him up with Davante Adams, two of the wide receivers that have the highest touchdown upsides on a weekly basis. I don't hate that one bit. You are definitely cornering the market when it comes to targets right here with Davante Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. I hate missing out on running backs in the first 2 rounds. However, you have so much volume tied up the wide receiver position now, possibly with your next 3 picks. You're looking for the likes of Mark Ingram's, Devin Singletary's, other running backs like that that can possibly, really give you a solid floor. They may not be those high ceiling guys, but that's why they're in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round. Maybe you take somebody with a high upside of like a James Conner in the 3rd, hoping that he's healthy and can really produce what we've seen him do in the past, because if he pops off and you've started off with Adams and Hopkins, it's a win-win here for your fantasy team in 2020. At the 207, we took Nick Chubb in the 1st. We're going to follow it up with George Kittle in the 2nd here. Now, similar to with Travis Kelce, right? George Kittle is basically a wide receiver 1, but wide receivers still being so deep, I want to corner that tight end market. I'm going to take George Kittle at 207 and pair him up with Nick Chubb. At the 208, I got Kenny Golladay, Kenny G, somebody who we are really high on here this year. Kind of similar to Tyreek Hill, to where this guy may not go out there and get a huge reception total, but the touchdown upside on a weekly basis is always there. The dude put up numbers with a quarterback named Blow. What does that tell you? You give him Matthew Stafford, a healthy Matthew Stafford, Kenny Golladay could absolutely explode this year, and you've paired him with Michael Thomas. You could arguably have the best overall wide receiver in fantasy, and this year's absolute breakout star who could finish inside the top 5 himself in Kenny Golladay. To start off your team is ridiculously good value at the wide receiver position. Yeah, it makes me shake a little bit because I don't have running backs, but similar to these other guys we've talked about, you have such a solid start at wide receiver that maybe just because you don't have those high ceiling running backs doesn't mean your team is sunk. It just means that your ceilings are going to be a little bit lower, or you may have to take a few more risks. Maybe a David Johnson, somebody in the 4th, 5th round, in hopes that he really turns things around. And you can afford to take that risk a little bit, right? Because you have such safety at your wide receiver position. 209, I'm going Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the 1st, we took Alvin Kamara. And now with Chris Godwin hopefully playing the majority of his snaps out of the slot, could see huge volume coming from Tom Brady here this year in Tampa Bay. Pairing that with Alvin Kamara in any sort of PPR league is definitely a great way to start off your drafts. I do expect Chris Godwin to be the target hog in that offense in Tampa Bay, and starting him off with Alvin Kamara, that 1-2 punch is going to be great here for your fantasy team. Number 10, I went with Mike Evans. And the reason I went with Evans here is because I think that he's a little bit of a risk, right? We just talked about Chris Godwin being the target hog. Well, Mike Evans could be the touchdown guy. I mean, there's just so many options in Tampa Bay. It's really hard to tell, but we know there's no resemblance of a running game as of right now. Why? Because Ronald Jones is in the backfield and he's not very good. So they're going to throw the ball a lot. In the 1st round, you took Zeke Elliott, and I said when we mentioned his name that he's probably the safest of anybody, at least at the running back position here in 2020, in the 1st round. So we can afford to take a little bit of a gamble here and go with Mike Evans. Could we reach for a running back right here? Maybe one of the next 2 picks we're going to talk about. You probably could. It's not like it's that big of a reach. You are going to have another pick coming back right there at the beginning of the 3rd, where a few of these guys may fall in your normal real drafts. But grabbing Mike Evans here, following it up with one of these running backs we talk about maybe next in the 3rd round is also a great start. At the 211, I'm taking Leonard Fournette. Now, in the 1st, we got Saquon Barkley, and a start of Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette does not scare me that much. A lot of people want to point to the possible reception regression, which is hard to say, for Leonard Fournette here this year, and I do. I see that could be an absolute possibility, especially if the Jags are trailing a lot. However, they're going to have to run the football to open up the passing game. Otherwise, this is going to be a nightmare in Jacksonville. This guy put up huge numbers last year. He just didn't get the touchdowns. Had Leonard Fournette scored a few more touchdowns, we may be talking about him in the late 1st round. He didn't. It was tough for his owners last year, but this is definitely a guy that can find the end zone. He can break the big play, and pairing him up with Saquon Barkley makes him a little bit less risky because Barkley is just that great of a talent that can really put you over the top there at the running back position. Plus, we talk about it, right? This is not a huge reach for Leonard Fournette, and it gives us back-to-back running backs here in the first round, which we absolutely love. At the 212, I'm going Todd Gurley. Now, his ADP is probably right around the third round, but if you think about it, you're going to turn right back around and take, the 3-1 pick next. So it doesn't matter if you take him at 212 or 3-1. It doesn't really matter. Pairing Todd Gurley and Christian McCaffrey could be a league-winning duo here this year. If Todd Gurley can go out there and remain healthy. Remember, last season, he didn't look hobbled by his knee. Now, sure, it could pop up at any time, but you can say that about every single player in the NFL. At any time, an injury could pop up that really limits their production. It's not just Todd Gurley, it's everybody that can happen to. If you have a healthy Todd Gurley in an Atlanta Falcons offense that's going to feature him not only on the ground and with the touchdown upside inside the 5-yard line, you also have a guy that can be heavily involved in the passing game now. No Austin Hooper in town. They brought in Hayden Hurst. We've already talked about Ridley and Julio in the past. Todd Gurley could run absolutely crazy this year in Atlanta. Taking him with your second pick is somewhat risky. However, you're going to turn right back around, take the 3-1. You have an option of a few stud wide receivers there, and you paired him with Christian McCaffrey, who is a bona fide stud here in fantasy football and will help lessen that risk a little bit of a Todd Gurley. If I compare McCaffrey with Gurley this year, watch out because those could be some huge numbers here in 2020. All right, so those are a few duos that we're looking at here in the first two rounds. You may see things a little bit differently, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. If we agreed on every single thing that we said in all of these videos, what would be the purpose in watching them? This is to supply perspective, right? To help you think outside the box. What am I going to look at? Yes, I want running backs, but I don't want to reach. All right, if I have to go wide receiver, I will. If I land that stud running back and I don't want to reach for any of those receivers, I'm going to look tight end. This is just how you need to really go after a mock draft. And when you're practicing these mock drafts and you're looking at ADPs, this is how you should be thinking. What am I going to do in this situation? Because if you've played fantasy football for any length of time, you realize it doesn't matter how much you mock draft. Your real draft is going to be different. It happens to everybody and it happens every single year. Part of the purpose of these videos is to really just to get your mind thinking the right way and how can you adjust in your drafts if something goes not according to plan. That's the purpose of all these videos. So hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, if you like the different look at things, make sure you hit that like button for us. We greatly appreciate the support. And if you're looking for more content, the channel is absolutely flooded with it right now. We're doing 6 to 7 videos a week between myself and Kyle. Patreon, it's still popping off with weekly content as well. We really enjoy it, right? We're starting to ramp up talking a lot of football. So if you're looking for that type of information, make sure you subscribe to the channel because you don't want to miss out on everything we have. But hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. We look forward to talking to you later. Have a good one. Thanks.